did it to you, right?
Yeah, they did.
It's
all
everybody
that.
else's fault. And you're schizophrenic. And burning stuff's cool.
And you stink.
And all you need is a lighter.
That's true.
And you got a lot of them.
You got tons of them.
Because you got a 3-legged dog.
You have no more crack, so you're like, what else am I going to do?
Yeah, you got to light something.
I like how they're blaming on like forest. Everybody's like, that's just forestry management.
Yeah, just like it has been for the past 100 years. Like it was in the heyday of Hollywood.
There's too many separate ones going on.
Yeah. The new one in Hollywood's a little strange.
Yeah. They thought that it might hit the store, the comedy store.
It's going, you know where it's at? It's at Franklin Street.
Just
where
hanging
UCB
out.
was.
The fire's just
Yeah,
like,
it's just hanging. Yeah.
Is it still going
what
right
are we
now?
going to get next?
Yeah, I'm going to fuck a struggling actress.
Damn.
Like the bird.
And you're dead.
Is that all burned right there?
It's going.
Holy shit.
They're evacuating.
It's like pretty bad.
Like they're evacuating areas that we've been to.
Wait, are those people playing basketball?
Yeah, they're hooping.
No, they're not.
You gotta hoop in the streets and you gotta play ball when you ain't got nothing going on at all.
They played with that basketball that's on fire from NBA Jam.
You got a pan of hot chicken grease. What you gonna do? You gonna throw it in the dry brush and make it Scooby-Doo.
You actually would make I think a decent living in the rap game.
I do that a lot when I'm driving through the hood.
You do that a lot.
They ain't got no chicken grease. No, they ain't got. That's when I used to carry cans of glass jars of chicken grease and throw them out the window. In the hood, they ain't got no chicken grease. No, you got to throw a jar full of bacon grease in the hood because you don't want to put it down your drain.
No, it's bad for your drain.
But I stopped littering, though. I did that a few years ago.
Really?
And I encourage other people not to litter.
I'm actively littering, though.
Don't litter.
You're littering in here, though. Everything's on the floor.
Well, this is my domain.
Collection. This is collection.
This is collection. Every piece that you see, this is heritage right
has
here.
been carefully curated.
Yeah.
eBay memorabilia.
Wow.
When the show's over, this is gonna sell.
Let me. Am I allowed to touch
You
it?
can.
Wow.
Just don't damage it, please.
I'm gonna try my
But
best
that's
not
authentic
to.
right there.
Get you
That's
some
an
white
authentic
gloves.
VGA cable right there. Amazing stuff. Nice Range Rover.
New body Range Rovers burned.
Nice.
Damn. New HSC on the market. You know what's really funny? The first car where they showed that bulldozer that was like moving cars, the first car in the row is a Mercedes EQS, which is the unsellable electric Mercedes. And if I owned one of those and I was upside down in a car loan,
yeah, you
I
just
would park
drive it.
Oh my God, my fire. Like
I would just drive it right to fucking fire.
yeah, oh shit, my upside you're upside down.
You're 50 miles away from where you live.
Yeah, I'm like, whoa, am I? I got lost.
I was lost in the fire.
Yeah, that car right there, that white car is the most unsellable. They're 125,000. I sold the first
That
one in
thing?
the country. Yeah, I used to work at Mercedes. That car is unsellable. A Hyundai Genesis also unsellable. Yeah, you can't get rid of those. If those things are sitting on your lot in a Mercedes dealership, you'll suck someone's dick to buy that thing if you're the general manager.
So people abandoned their cars,
Yeah.
and then they had to bulldoze the cars for the firemen to get to the fire.
I like how they have
Damn.
special red bulldozers.
They should be able to just go right over the cars.
It's a fireproof bulldozer right there.
Yeah, this guy doesn't know how to operate. Just
That's
go
actually
straight.
an Israeli
They're like,
bulldozer
we've
that
never
they
had
flew
to.
in.
We've never had to do
They
this.
use those to take out Palestinian homes.
Just grind them down. With the stone dust, the body mush makes it all kind of a nice little aggregate that smooths very smooth.
They could just flatten it down and make new road out of the cars. It's recycling.
It's like a drift track. The kids love it.
Help the environment.
Wow, that's where it's going right now.
Yeah,
Did
that's
you
a
see that
sign.
interview where they're talking to the mayor and she's just silent the whole time?
Oh yeah,
Wild.
Everyone's like, this can't
Awesome.
be. They're like, this can't be real. I'm like, I think it is.
yeah.
What a dipshit. And
What
honestly,
is she gonna say? She should just be like, oops, guys.
Yeah, what do you
That's
want me to
she should've
say?
said.
That's what you fucking get, man.
did you see her reading the paper?
No.
She's like this. We are terrible. Sorry. Like you don't even know how to apologize or like feel show remorse.
I think you could just be like, hey man, I really fucked up. And then what else are you gonna say?
Nothing.
Like, I fucked up. I'm just gonna resign and go back to Africa because that's where she was holidaying.
Really?
She
Yeah,
was
you
somewhere.
did you know that?
No.
She was in Ghana,
Did you
What was
see
she
her?
doing there?
being black. I don't know.
Ghana.
Ooga booga,
Stealing money,
I
obviously.
assumed you
Who is
knew.
this?
I'm very disappointed. in
banging
you.
on some bongos or something.
She
The
was
mayor
buying
of
cloth?
Los Angeles, when this fire
She was in
stuff
Africa.
started popping off, she was in Africa
Can you imagine?
on vacation.
That'd be like being caught in like that'd be like this. I'm in Thailand. What's up?
yeah.
Karen, that can't be a last
Karen
name.
Bass.
Yeah, that's like one of those hidden names. Yeah, her getting railed. This is one of the most fun things I've
In
ever seen.
response to that,
What a fucking
do you owe
retard.
citizens an apology
Goober.
for being absent while their homes were burning? Do you regret cutting the fire department budget by millions of dollars, Madam Mayor?
This
Nice.
girl's like giving her.
Have you nothing
Nasty
to say
eyes.
today?
Yeah,
Have
she
you
did a good job.
absolutely nothing to say to the citizens today? Elon Musk says that you're utterly incompetent. Are you considering your position?
Hell yeah, let's go, man.
Madam Mayor, have you
I wish we could hear like
to the
her
citizens
pants shitting
today?
or something like that. Like just
Disaster.
fuck.
Or just loud gulping sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, she needs her ass
No
beat.
apology for them.
Yeah, she should have her ass beat. That was an Irish guy. He'd be getting lumped up right now.
If I was her, I'd be scared I was going to get shot.
Yeah.
What part of the airport
You
is
lose
this?
your
Sorry.
The part you
the
hide
bathroom.
in. The part you hide in
Yeah.
when you're in.
What a goof.
Yeah.
She should be like, no more questions.
God damn.
No more questions,
Please.
please.
I have pants full of shit now. Wow.
Man.
What a goober. Who elected this fucking retard?
I mean, I guess
Women
LA.
and gays.
Yeah, right. The gays in LA.
The gays
This-
and the trans.
They're sweating
Blacks.
now. They're sweating now.
I'm sure the whites
Fleeing.
also.
And the
Lost
whites.
their lives. Kids
This fucking guy, man.
lost their schools.
What's he on a
Families
on a
completely
green screen
torn
set?
apart.
What's he doing?
Churches burned down. This guy wanted to politicize it. I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say.
When is this freak gonna go away?
I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with.
Freak gonna go away?
I have a lot of thoughts, and I know what I want to say.
When is this freak gonna go away?
I stood next to a president of the United States of America today, and I was proud to be with Joe Biden, and he had the backs of every single person.
Do you see
in
there
this
was a
community
guy,
who
a
played
billionaire
politics and tried to
on
divide.
Twitter that was like, hey, is there any like private fireman that I could hire to save my house?
Really?
Yeah, and I guess, and then people were like, "Fuck this guy," and then everyone was like, "He's like rich. Like, if he wants, then he wants to pay. Why can't he pay?" And then that guy like now had to scrub his fucking account.
Really?
Yeah, he's a billionaire. It's like, yeah, I'm willing to pay more money than what
Yeah.
they're paying. So why can't I hire you guys?
Damn.
Can you?
That's a bold move. Going to
Okay.
Twitter asking for private firemen.
Why not?
Yeah.
Nice.
Those
Why?
private
That
firemen
sounds
were like,
totally
I'm
normal.
waiting for this call.
That's funny.
That's
though.
fat.
That's funny.
But honestly, like think about imagine private firemen.
Yeah.
Like they're
Why
even
not? They're
late-
just waiting at home
they're
for a
even
call.
lazier than regular.
Какие тут могут быть претензии, в принципе, к тексту, там не к тексту, и, в принципе, тут текст может не быть, он будет попердывать, поскрипывать что-то там, да? Его написать второй стих.
Нет.
Слушай, бро,
Как видите, мы омерзительное сборище негодяев, отбросов и подростков. Незнакомец, присоединяйся к нам, рассказывай нам свою печальную историю.
Это я, такой же маленький, как мелочи фиксик. Пугал баян, но дрочил на девочек-фиксеров. Постоянно ждал вас в гости, но провожал только до лифта. Черная дверь с числом 80, за ней обои цвета бедер нимфы. Мои вечно воспаленные лимфы, постоянные абсцессы. Лестничная площадка была лимбом, где у Наташи чуть не остановилось сердце. И каждый убивали до... И по твоему завету не хотел выходить за пределы Тикси. И ты как трагедию брать.
не, ну тут очевидно, какой бы фарик героиновый не был, да? Героиновый такой мощнейший темный рыцарь. Овсянка тут навалил. Хорошо тут Овсянка навалил. 0-1 за Овсянкина. Такой трючок, как будто конец уже, да, как будто все. Вот уже закончился альбом. Ну такой, как бы, не сначала, да, есть такой, был, знаете, такой трек есть «Не сначала». Это как будто вот так же, только круче. Как так же, только круче.
Факт-системе, в чем они говорят про местных селеб, что они все курят крек, и они бы их сделали бэби мамай.
Хватило лишь раз. Щемят, как в фильме, когда пуля даст тебе.
Приятненький. О, да? Блин, я вспомнил, что засэмплирован здесь Борен in the Club of Gore. Вы знаете эту группу, да? Я 1000 раз уже вбрасывал. И как будто есть мысль о том, что с клипом этот трек намного круче работает, чем без клипа. Я вот сейчас слушаю и такой немножко скучненько. Скучненько, с клипом было стильно. Тарафа драл вот настолько. Пацаны горшка банк делать.
Чуки говорили, что я глуп. Только в школе кого трахнул, что я груз. Теперь я вхожу в школу, пиздюки бегут с уроков, чтобы сделать фараоном пару фото.
Колка,
Или класс.
я здесь.
Давай просыпаюсь, потом в морге я хочу. Шутник.
Реально. Классический трек американского хип-хопа. Блять, у кого-то в Кыргызстане точно есть тречики мои. Кента, смотри, как я выебу.
Смотри, как я выебу сейчас.
Кента, смотри, как я выебу сейчас кента. Смотри, как я выебу сейчас кента.
Смотри, как я выебу сейчас.
Кореша. Или собаку.
Мне больше не нужно представляться. Там, где я иду войной, ты не посмел сопротивляться. Слишком рано, чтобы сдохнуть, слишком поздно оправдаться. Ты проебавший душу, но победитель номинации. Мне похуй на их игры, это факт. И будь честным, то, что ты кому-то нужен, это фарт. Твоя сука меня любит, будто клипы на Порнхаб. Ну, конечно же, ты знаешь каждый трек, но не фанат. Эй. Окей, давай-ка по деталям. Так как я выглядел год назад, тебя сейчас одевают. Я курю дерьмо публично, будто я не прикасаем. Да я мертвый невредим, ведьма с болот, как будто Салим. Каково это видеть меня везде? Ведь взлетел лишь тот птенец, кого гнобили в том гнезде. И ты дурак, если подумал, что я хоть чуть-чуть обижен. Ведь от той-то лежит рана, а ты видимо. Эй, сучка, оближи меня как леденец. Леденец, принеси себя на блюде, ведь ты знаешь, кто отец. Я как визит 2007, это так. Я в актрисе как, кручу себе косяка. Независим, я не вы, никому не кидал. Твоя сука меня ест глазами, будто каннибал. Заставляя ее чувствовать огонь. Она тебя пихает, тихо шепчет, познакомь. Это сучья ловушка, так что нахуй треугольник. Моя сука истребитель, твоя сука просто пробник. Может хуёвый лидер, но моя рука не дрогнет. Они зовут спаситель, моя музыка загробна. Не дергаю за нити, я стреляю тупо в лоб. И ненавижу тебя, зритель, ведь ты слишком избалован. Эй. Эй, сучка, оближи меня как леденец.
Он только непонятно. Но это хороший трек. Выебон, только непонятно на кого. На Джимба или на кого? Или на Бульвара Депо. На кого этот выебон? Так, у нас второй с альбома Мементо Мори. Тут долго.
Дверью я...
Розовый. Друзья, подруги. С ними одним целым, Фарик.
Дай мне пространство.
Декстер, Дукалис.
Эй, бля, спроси моих друзей.
Овсянчики такого.
Без меня было бы вставать на колени.
Мне нравится.
На ушах я выпускаю шаттл, суки пьют на брудершафт. Я знаю, очень скоро нас полюбит этот шар. Ты хочешь понять, кто я и есть отдельный жанр. Я трачу все на братьев, ведь они были всегда. Каждый в моем складе одинокая звезда. И мы встанем друг за друга выше горного хребта. У твоей подруги этот трек стекает изо рта. Одинокая звезда, одинокая. Видно в объективе, сколько они стоят. Мальборо Мартини.
И у Фатлеть. Unplugged 2, Love Kill.
I was at the airport and this lady was breastfeeding a toddler, and you could hear him the whole time going,
No.
And I was like, oh, please take that in the bathroom.
No.
When you're making noises because you're satiated, it's disgusting.
No.
It's it was so gross. It was disgusting.
No, I can't. No,
No.
6. That's what I'm saying. 6 months, and then he can learn to. We can migrate to something else.
I was at the airport and this lady was breastfeeding.
Wear my glasses to bed. So I just went back in the house. Walking. Up.
What up, Whiskey Ginger fans? Welcome back to the show. If it's your first time joining the show, welcome to the
A time, but as a I don't know. I love that he's working.
Yeah, he
New York City. I am a native New Yorker. A lot of my friends that used to live in New York have now left, yeah. I lived in New York City my whole life. I've never had a good day. People are like, why don't you move? I'm like, where am I going to bring this attitude to? Think I'm going to do well in Oklahoma? Yeah, and if you drive in the city, you can't be a good person. When I come, and then just show up on Christmas. No, I can't get a gun. I would use it the first day. This guy was also trying to get off, but he missed the exit, so we put a red light together and just he got.
Ethically, my duty
Ethically?
is your.
I'm sorry.
I must be hearing things. Did you actually...
You're ethically, my duty is...
Ethically?
You're...
I'm sorry. I must be hearing things. Did you actually just use the word ethically in a sentence?
In almost every discussion about Breaking Bad, it's
a sentence.
In almost every discussion about Breaking Bad, it's a widely held view that Walter White is the ultimate villain, the embodiment of greed, pride, selfishness, and evil. Countless video essays on YouTube hammer home the idea that Walter's journey is one of moral decay, emphasizing just how bad he became. But here's the thing, they're totally wrong. The truth is, Walter's actions were not only understandable, but often fully morally justifiable, given the circumstances he found himself in. He didn't act out of malice or selfishness. Instead, nearly every choice he made had a logical, often necessary and morally justifiable reason behind it. The writers of Breaking Bad made sure that his decisions were grounded in relatable motivations, even when he was forced to confront life and death situations in a brutal criminal underworld. If there's one character who consistently caused people to suffer, it's actually Jesse Pinkman. Unlike Walter, who almost always carefully considered the consequences of his choices, Jesse often acted on impulse, driven by emotion rather than rationality. Jesse may seem like the innocent bystander, the likable screw-up who constantly gets in over his head, but in reality, his actions are far more reckless, selfish, and morally questionable than people give him credit for. In this video, I'm going to lay out a case that challenges the common narrative. The real fact of the matter is, everything Walter White did was morally defensible. Meanwhile, Jesse Pinkman, the supposed moral victim, is the true architect of almost all of the chaos and pain which occurs in Breaking Bad. Just to be clear, this video will be filled with spoilers for both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, so if you haven't finished either series, proceed with caution. Chapter 1. Manufacturing and selling drugs is not immoral. One of the core arguments against Walter White is that he manufactured and sold methamphetamine, which is a dangerous and illegal drug. But let's take a step back and think about this objectively. Is the act of selling drugs inherently immoral? I would argue, no. People are demanding meth, and Walt is simply meeting that demand. He isn't forcing anyone to buy or use the product. He's giving people exactly what they want. In fact, This is no different from countless legal industries that profit by selling products people willingly purchase, regardless of the harm they might cause to themselves. In economics, there's a concept called an externality. This refers to a cost or benefit which affects a third party who isn't directly involved in the original transaction. But when it comes to selling meth, there is no such negative externality. The people buying the drugs are the only ones affected by their decision. There's no third party suffering as a result of that voluntary transaction. Gail Bedecker, one of the most principled and logical characters in Breaking Bad, sums this up perfectly in Season 3, Episode 6, when he says,
I'm definitely a libertarian. Consenting adults want what they want. And if I'm not supplying it, they will get it somewhere else. At least with me, they're getting exactly what they pay for. No added toxins or adulterants.
Gail is absolutely right here. If people are willingly seeking out drugs, and if they're going to get them regardless of who supplies them, what moral responsibility does the supplier really have? As long as the product is exactly what they're paying for, the seller has upheld their end of the deal. There's nothing inherently wrong with producing and selling something people want. Doing drugs is a personal choice. The laws surrounding drugs, therefore, are unjust and immoral. They infringe on personal freedom. In the grand scheme of things, the world might be better off without people who are impulsive and self-destructive like drug addicts. In a counterintuitive way, allowing these people to use drugs freely could actually result in positive externalities by weeding out drug users from the gene pool, like when they accidentally overdose. If people die from doing drugs, that's actually a good thing. The reality is that the world will be better off without all of these impulsive and stupid drug users in the long run. Chapter 2. The concept of being in the game. One of the key concepts in both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul is the idea of being in the game. This is best explained by Mike Ehrmantraut in Better Call Saul, Season 5, Episode 8, Bagman. When Jimmy reveals to Mike that he's told his wife, Kim, about his involvement in criminal operations, Mike simply responds,
She knows. She's in the game now.
What? What Mike means is that once you're involved in the criminal world, you accept the risks that come with it. Whether knowingly or unknowingly, once you step into that world, the rules change and the dangers become a part of life. The game is high risk, but it's also high reward, and anyone who enters it does so willingly, fully aware of the consequences. This is a crucial point when it comes to understanding Walter White's actions. The people Walt had to kill, those he confronted or fought against, were in the game. They weren't innocent bystanders or unwitting victims. They were players who knowingly entered the criminal underworld. They accepted the inherent risks involved, which includes the possibility of violence, betrayal, and even death. Just as in any high-stakes situation, whether legal or illegal, the risks come with the territory. In the criminal world, you have to expect violence and force as part of the business model. This is because criminal enterprises, by their very nature, cannot rely on the traditional legal system to enforce contracts or resolve disputes. When you're dealing in illegal goods, you can't simply call the police when someone wrongs you. You can't file a lawsuit if a deal goes bad or if someone threatens your operation. Because the state refuses to allow legitimate business to be conducted around drugs, these organizations are left to govern themselves, often through force and violence. Normally, the government holds a monopoly on the use of force. It enforces contracts, it settles disputes, and it provides the legal framework for business to operate smoothly. But when it comes to the drug trade, the government has essentially opted out by outlawing the very products being sold. As a result, the private market has had to take the government's place, and that includes employing the use of violent force when necessary. This is not a moral failing on the part of Walter or any other player in the game. It's a consequence of the government's decision to criminalize something that should be legal. Violence also becomes necessary for another reason: survival. In this game, revealing the nature of someone's criminal activities can get them locked up for life, or worse. The stakes are incredibly high, and keeping people quiet becomes a matter of life and death. In this environment, Walt wasn't being cold-blooded. He was adapting to the rules of a dangerous world created by unjust laws. The harsh penalties for drug-related crimes, combined with the government's refusal to allow a legal market, turned the game into a battlefield. The state created this system by criminalizing something that should be legal, and the consequences, the violence, the secrecy, and the betrayals, are the natural results of that unjust decision. Walter didn't write the rules of this world, he just played by them. And every person who worked in this world knew exactly what they were signing up for. Chapter 3. Every move Walt made was justified. Let's break down the major moments in Breaking Bad where people claim Walter White acted immorally. When you look closely at each situation, you'll see that every supposed immoral action Walt takes is actually fully justified. Let's start with the earliest controversial action. 1. Walt killing Crazy 8. Now, while this might not be something many people find particularly immoral, there are still those who think Walt crossed a line here. The reality is, Walt had no choice. Crazy 8 was planning to kill Walt, and when Walt learned of this, it became a clear-cut case of self-defense. Faced with the choice between being killed or killing his would-be murderer, Walt did what anyone in that situation would do. He acted to save his own life. There's no moral ambiguity here. Walt was fully justified in killing Crazy 8. 2. Walt letting Jane die. Now this is where opinions start to get more divided, but I'll be the first to say, Walt letting Jane die was entirely justified. By not intervening as she overdosed, Walt saved the person he cared about most, Jesse. Jane was clearly leading Jesse down a path of destruction, getting him deeper into heroin addiction and dragging him into an even worse spiral. Not only was this in Jesse's best interest, but Jane had also threatened Walt's family by blackmailing him for the drug money. She was dangerous and manipulative. Frankly, she had this coming. Let's be real. Jane wasn't exactly adding a lot of value to the world. She was a junkie tattoo artist who was about to destroy Jesse's life. And Walt's decision not to intervene was a form of self-defense for both himself and Jesse. 3. The airplane crash. The infamous mid-air collision of the two airliners is one of the most unexpected plot points of Breaking Bad. But can Walt really be blamed for this? Absolutely not. Walt had no way of knowing that allowing Jane to die would set off a chain of events leading to an air traffic controller, Donald Margolis, Jane's father, making a catastrophic error at work. The crash was a freak accident, and there's no reasonable way Walt could have foreseen such an extreme and outlandish consequence. To hold him responsible for this would be absurd. If anyone deserves some blame from the main cast, it's Jesse. He got Jane hooked on hard drugs after she'd been sober for a long time, which played a huge role in her downfall. But even then, the ultimate responsibility lies with Donald Margolis himself. He shouldn't have returned to work as an air traffic controller while he was still overwhelmed by grief. His inability to judge his emotional state led to the accident. 99% of the fault lies with him, not with Walt nor Jesse. 4. Walt getting Jesse to kill Gale. Finally, there's the controversial moment in which Walt orders Jesse to kill Gale. Many people argue that this is proof of Walt's moral decay, but they're wrong. Walt was planning to kill Gale himself. The only reason Jesse had to do it was that Mike was about to kill Walt. This was a life-or-death situation, and Walt's hand was forced. He was in a situation where he had to make a difficult decision to save his own life. It's important to remember that Jesse owed Walt. Walt had already killed the two gangbangers to save Jesse, and they were only in that predicament in the first place because Jesse had recklessly gone after them. Let's not forget Gale was in the game. He willingly entered the criminal world, which meant he accepted the risks that came with it. Gus Fring, who orchestrated this situation by trying to replace Walt with Gale, is more to blame than anyone. If Gus hadn't been so quick to resort to violence as a solution to his business problems, none of this would have been necessary. Walt was simply protecting himself from Gustavo's overreaction. If Gus had been more open-minded, he would have seen that Walt's actions were motivated by his deep care for Jesse. Instead of viewing Walt as a loose cannon, Gus could have understood that Walt wasn't a liability, but someone who was simply trying to protect those he cared about. Walt's motivations were mostly reasonable and rooted in loyalty and survival. Also, Walt was totally willing to continue working for Gus, as if nothing had happened. But Gus's lack of psychological insight led him to always default to murder as the solution, and he totally underestimated Walt. 5. Walt poisoning Brock.
I am sorry about Brock, but he's alive, isn't he? He's fine, just as I planned it. Don't you think I knew exactly how much to give him? That I had it all measured out? Come on, don't you know me by now?
The decision to poison Brock might seem extreme at first glance, but when you break it down, Walt's choice was entirely justified. First and foremost, Brock wasn't harmed in the long run, and neither was Jesse. The lily-of-the-valley poison Walt used was non-lethal and temporary. On the other hand, if Walt hadn't acted to get Jesse on his side, there was a very real chance that Hank, and possibly Walt's entire family, would have been killed by Gus. In this case, poisoning Brock was the lesser of two evils and a necessary move to ensure that Jesse would be on Walt's side. Not poisoning Brock would have led to catastrophic outcomes for many innocent people. When we talk about the value of human life, we can't ignore the fact that Brock, while a child, isn't the most valuable person in the world. His future, given his surroundings and upbringing, doesn't exactly look promising. His mother is a drug addict, and there's a good chance Brock himself will follow a similar path. It's harsh, but realistic. Brock's potential contribution to the world is minimal compared to what Walt already had accomplished and could still have achieved from that point onward. Walt and his family hold far greater value to society than any poor Mexican kid ever could. Brock is very likely to grow up to be a dumb, poor drug user, just like his mother, or maybe even a gangbanger like his uncle. These traits are likely to be deeply embedded in his genetics. He shouldn't be thought of as having extremely high moral value just because he's a child. Also, Jesse's obsessive concern for Brock, a child that isn't even his, exposes just how misguided his values are. His fixation on protecting and caring for Brock, while admirable on the surface, reveals a deeper flaw. He's putting immense energy into raising another man's offspring. Jesse is literally a cuckold. 6. Walt killing Gus. Gus Fring's death is one of the most iconic moments in Breaking Bad, and it's another case where Walt's actions were fully justified. After Gale's death, Gus immediately escalated the situation, targeting Walt and even threatening his family. If Gus had taken a moment to reflect, he could have seen that Walt wasn't a liability. He was just fiercely protective of Jesse. But instead, Gus acted like a cold, ruthless, impulsive animal, making the situation far more dangerous than it needed to be. When Gus threatened Walt's family, Walt had no choice but to eliminate him. Some critics point to the fact that Walt set off a bomb in a nursing home, but let's be real.
Okay, the Destiny thing. This has been kind of brewing. You know, this tweet we're looking at here, this goes back a few days ago. This is Pixie, at Pixie Love, I guess a Twitch streamer, I assume. She says, on November 29th, the streamer Destiny non-consensually shared my nudes, making me a victim of revenge porn. I will be suing him in federal court. Here is my story. I will be suing Stephen Kenneth Bunnell II. I wish I had a number after my name. On November 29th, I learned that the streamer Destiny had non-consensually shared pornographic content of me. My dignity, peace of mind, and hopes for the future were stripped away. I am at least the third person he has done this to. I hope to be the last. I've known Destiny for around 5 to 6 years and often find myself in heavy disagreement. Despite this, I do my best to see the best sides of all people, try my hardest to spread positivity, yada, yada, yada. When I was 19, over 5 years ago, I was extremely sexually inexperienced and sheltered. Being severely terrified of leading someone on or sexual assault, I thought I could trust Destiny, who I had multiple long conversations with regarding consent and boundaries. You can imagine my surprise when I discovered he distributed pornographic content. Yes, you read that right. God, it's so wordy and self-righteous, these things, but you got to do what you got to do, I guess. She's got like a fundraiser raising money for the lawsuit. She's raised $16,000 thus far. I don't understand why Destiny would knowingly and willingly put me in a position where I would receive nonstop sexual abuse and harassment. You know, the problem with these people is they make up these fake rules about sexual morality. So they think that you can be promiscuous and do all kinds of, you know, debased, degrading things, but that it's all moral as long as there's consent involved or whatever. And then they're shocked to discover that the people engaging this behavior aren't as moral as they pretend to be, don't actually care about any of this shit as much as they pretend to. The betrayal, coupled with the hundreds of messages I've received filled with sexual harassment and abuse, have left me feeling hopeless and devoid of almost all happiness. I will be suing him for violating U.S. Federal Code 15 U.S.C. 6851 civil action relating to disclosure of intimate images and for publication of private facts in Florida. I will be seeking emotional and punitive damages. I've been told that a court case like this could potentially cost tens of thousands of dollars, yada, yada, yada. Destiny apologizing to me for his actions. Ugh, there shouldn't be. No, I'm so sorry. There's literally zero excuse. I'd had phone convos and stuff with this person. They were fairly close to me. It's worthless to say it at this point, but I'm super sorry. There's literally no excuse. I won't say or confirm anything about them. If there's any particular action or thing I can do, just let me know. Yeah, well, apparently it's pay her $1 million is the answer to that question. Downplaying the pain I felt. I'll take that one at face value. Destiny offering to pay some bills, I guess, to try to make me feel better. This feels super lame, and I don't at all want to imply that somehow just giving you money helps anything go away or fixes anything for you. But if you have any bills or owe money or anything or have any financial stuff I can help with, I can at the very least chip in and help with any of that. So it's at least one less thing you have to worry about or stress over while you're worrying and getting through this. Well, what a stand-up guy. What a good guy Steven is. I think I said this yesterday, but it's very, when these male feminists, these people who push this retard feminist bullshit, when they get hoisted by their own petards. The fuck is a petard? William Shakespeare's play Hamlet. Petard from 17th century manuscript military designs. When these male feminists get hoisted by their own petards, it's very funny to me, and I think he's going to have a hard time with this lawsuit. I think he's probably going to lose or settle this lawsuit. That's my prediction. And if he doesn't settle and it goes to trial, hope you don't get a feminist judge, broski. Hope you don't get a progressive feminist judge ruling on your case. That would be a shame. Destiny is being sued for sharing revenge porn allegedly. Reddit mods are now deleting any discussion about it on r/Destiny. I want to make a short post that goes over a few things regarding the sub and my positions. Imagine your life is being a Destiny stan and then this shit comes out, okay? The sub will for the foreseeable future be strictly politics and online memes. What it normally is about 85% of the time. I understand that people want to talk about Destiny, the leaks, the pending litigations, and all of your feelings about them, but there's been so many posts just asking, what do we do now as far as the subreddit is concerned? What we are going to do is have the subreddit be focused on politics in a critical time for the U.S. as the Trump administration is under. Let's not get sidetracked by the fact that our poster child, our mentor, our role model is a pervert who's undergoing all kinds of litigations and legal issues over his perverted activity. Let's not get sidetracked by all that, okay? We're not going to be talking about that. What does this mean for Destiny-related posts? They'll be deleted. We've had moderators choose to step away from the community and fully support them in that choice. From here forward, I will only be speaking on behalf of myself. Spent the entire weekend after Thanksgiving moderating the subreddit. Imagine this is your life. It's like Thanksgiving and you have time off and you're like, I've got to watch the Destiny subreddit and make sure nobody's posting the video of him sucking dick. Oh my God. You know who's got to be really enjoying themselves right now is Mr. Girl. Our boy Max Carson has got to be feeling really vindicated. 16 hours a day on the holidays cleaning up Destiny's dick sucking videos. I remembered more in that time than I think I had in the month prior. Oh, removed more, sorry. Before you say I was sweeping, understand that leaked or not, there's no way we are allowing pornographic content to be posted here. The issue is I had to see all of that shit being posted because people just couldn't help themselves. I know about as much as you guys do regarding this situation. It's not great. It's not great. Ooh, he leaked other people's porn non-consensually, and now it's out on the internet, and the person involved is humiliated. I gotta say, it's not great. It's not a great look for our guy. It's terrible. And I think that whatever means to remedy the situation should be found. I continue to stay here because I enjoy this community. Blah, blah, blah. Edit locked. You just can't help yourselves but comment on these things when I specifically asked you not to. So he makes a thread. He makes a big post about his thoughts, but he's like, don't talk about it. And then people talk about it. He's like, that's it. I'm locking the post. Man, Reddit.
Straight sex cult shit, dude. Straight up. I've often maintained the position that they behave like a cult, and doing weird sex pest behavior and sex crimes potentially further
434
solidifies
call Sam. Yeah.
that.
Accurate assessment from the trick who goes to brothels. It is sex pest and perhaps criminal, as we'll see with this tweet from Sherry. Destiny has blocked me and banned me and people supporting me from his community. I have not done anything besides ask him for an explanation, as I was assured this was something he didn't do to me. When I wasn't given one privately, I spoke publicly. I am not involved in any lawsuit or coordinating with anyone seeking justice due to the leaks in November, though they have had my empathy and support in their efforts. It is only yesterday I became aware that Destiny had recorded me while we had sex without my consent, and on a public, be it prosecutors that they can press charge to not let your dick want to make a public statement. Just this was, I think this number flashed on screen at the end of the last video, and I was like, what's the deal with that phone number? I guess they took calls from people and he's responding to the calls. This is Sam Hyde, a message to Vivek.
Now we're doing a return to classical elegance here. How did they, back in the day when they wore hats to take the train, how did they not adjust their balls 50 times a day?
It wasn't documented.
It wasn't. The ball adjusting wasn't documented. I've never seen on an old TV show a guy reach his hand into his pants to adjust his balls. Or sitting, just having them unbuttoned all the time. You don't see that on TV.
Yeah. When guys wear
Panties?
No, never mind.
When guys wear what?
It's gonna sound gay when I say it. I don't want to say it.
Nothing could sound gayer than the books I've been reading lately. Guys, we got Vivek Ramaswamy, Woke Inc. We got Capital Punishment, How Wall Street is Using Your Money to Create a Country You Didn't Vote For, by the best-selling author of Woke Inc. right here. And we have Truths, The Future of America First. Luckily, this is written at a 4th grade reading level. So pretty much anybody can pick this up and start to rock. And then we have Nation of Victims, which is all about how you and I, because we had sleepovers and fun childhoods and our moms didn't make us play violin, how we should be replaced by Indians. That's the last chapter this book is about. But some of this stuff is pretty spicy, man. Let me open this up here. Right here, yeah. I'll never forget when I was in middle school. I can't even read that on camera. It was when I turned 33 that I realized I was addicted to making men gay like B. Diddy. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but this Vivek, these books, this is some, and actually, no joke, the first word I saw is homosexuality, so it's not that far off here. Oh, that's a harsh allegation. For example, there's no such thing as a gay gene. Yeah, hell yeah. So I was told that if I wanted to have Vivek Ramaswamy on the show, I would have to read all 4 of his books because he didn't want to have a remedial conversation. So that's why I have these. It's because we got to get Vivek on the show.
Perfect Guy Life?
That was from Vivek, yeah. Any page you open this up to, I promise you it's going to be just glop. Random page, 142 of truths. I have my doubts about whether Ann Coulter is actually, that's in italics, more ready to vote for the great-grandson of a Jamaican immigrant than...
That's a fucking crazy requirement. I thought Jay Dyer was a little out of line saying that the person has to have 100,000 followers to get debated, but you have to read 4 books before I talk to you? Oh, you want me to talk to you? Here's 4 books that I wrote, by the way, that I'm going to need you to read.
She is for the grandson of an Anglo-Saxon British lord. This is what people care about. This is what you're supposed to care about. You know what? The thing is, I could sit here with my highlighter and my notepad, and I could have ChatGPT read these things and summarize them for me, which is what I would do. I could go through these and have, you know, my little legal pad where I'm typing up my debate notes. How about this, though? You're Indian. I'm going to talk to you about your country. Please. Oh. Got water on the video?
Debate over.
Whoops. It's already floating down the stream. Chris, can you get me a bucket? It's already dripping everywhere, Chris. Emergency. There we go. Hey, guys. Welcome to the Sam Hyde Show.
Oh, shit.
Ah.
What's he doing?
Vivek Ramaswamy is
Drinking
a first-generation
tea?
American entrepreneur, investor, New York Times best-selling author. He's the founder of multi-billion-dollar enterprises, including Roivant Sciences. That's the one with the fake medicine, right? Roivant Sciences. This guy like Elizabeth Theranos. This is so woke right of me. Perfect. Chris, perfect. Chris, could you go give this to a young kid that's struggling to get ahead in business? So we're learning about show production right now.
Go
Step
give this
one,
to a young
when
kid
you're
who's
surrounded by
struggling
video
to get
stuff, you
ahead
wanna
in
keep it
business.
Liquid cooled, okay? We do liquid cooling, keep this stuff soaking wet so that it can buzz and vibrate behind your head when you're trying to think. Perfect.
Hi, Sam. Right now, my family is going through a pretty big upheaval. Our new landlords at our shop are Arab, and they're kicking us out to put up a chop shop vinyl car wrapping business. We're being forced to move by March. I don't know what to do. There's not really an amount of working harder that can help the simple fact that another person is taking away from our lives. I'm doing the best that I can to help my dad and continue this business on.
I only pay in Nigerian crypto. The flip side of that coin, it's called gold coin. It's backed by gold. If you are fortunate enough to have family that you can link up with, team up with, and build a business, that's probably one of the best things going right now, or ever. It's low friction. You don't have to have contracts. You know that the person, their genetic destiny is tied to yours. They want you to succeed, hopefully, unless you have some schizo brother or something who's always raping people. You got a brother like that, Chris? Raper? Yeah. Not anymore. If you have a family member that's got their stuff together, especially if it's your father who can show you the ropes like I show Chris, show him the ropes. That's when it's time to work out with Chris. I show him the ropes. He never does it. He hates it. But, yeah, man, team up. And it is time to hunker down, though. And I'm going to couch this in certain language. The best known procedural, this is a whole chapter here. Members of the public, the framers of the Constitution, believed that the lawmakers, Democratic, and Arabs get out, okay? It's time to hunker down. This generation coming up, you guys, the jig is up. The whole thing that they use to lull my generation and older to sleep, this racial guilt stuff, like you owe somebody something for being white, that's over and done with. Nobody serious believes that anymore, and anybody that tells you anything like that is trying to get money out of you. They're trying to get their hand up your ass. The idea that the founders of this country, the people who built this country, built it because they wanted some Arab guy to have a vinyl wrap shop, fuck all that. There's not much you can do about that in the short term, but it's important the attitude that you take towards it. So yeah, it's time to hunker down. It's time to start gathering your acorns. If you have a father that you can build a business with or take over the family business, then put the gas pedal down and do it.
Hey, over 3 years sober from pills that I got jacked up on from being in the military and had to get surgery. Got sober, got my life back, married, having a baby on the way. I'm just really nervous that there's no fucking future. I'm an idiot and never saved money, and now I'm starting to, but I just don't see how this pans out. How do you restart at age 31? I have a good job now, but not like retiring kind of job. I don't want to work till I'm fucking 80, but I want to give my kid the best life possible. What do we do?
You sound like a nerd, bro. You were way cooler when you were on those pills. You were way more chill when you were on pills. Is that Jamie or Jesse? Yo, remember when Jesse was always around? He was on pills. He was just like mad chill. That was the version of Jesse that I wanted to see, not this guy. Family man, what is this? I have a job and I need money. What are you talking about, bro? Listen to rap music. Who's that rapper that I like? Krayshawn? Bitch, you work at Arby's. Okay. What did she have that one song like 10 years ago? Pussy made by Gucci. That's how good her pussy is. It's made by Gucci. Is that true? 31 is young.
That true?
So I wouldn't stress out too much about this. You've got time ahead of you, and if you're 31 and you already have a good job and you're already starting to save money, that puts you ahead of the game. And I would just say, try to be less neurotic and don't worry about it too much. Just keep putting one foot in front of the other. You overcame an opioid addiction, right? What pills did he get hooked on in the military? Super combat pills? He was just addicted to being a super deadly soldier. Like Jocko. I'm addicted to super deadly combat pills. Did you see the coach today? He had Jocko Molk. Yo, I wanted to be like, I can't work out if I'm looking at that. You got to take that out of here. Overcame a drug addiction. You're married. You have a baby on the way. You're saving money. You're 31. That's young.
Yeah.
You have a good job at 31. Don't be nervous about the future. Stop. You're overthinking it. Stop overthinking it. You're ahead of the game. If you have a woman that's not a bitch and you're lucky enough to have children in your life, you're probably good to go, man. It's not a retirement kind of job.
I started iHypocrite when I was like 34, 35. Older than this guy is the point, and now this is what I do for a living. The only piece of advice I would give to that guy is try to find a side hustle that you can do in the evenings or whatever outside of your job. Try to find something like that you can build, and who knows, maybe you'll become successful at that.
What is a retirement kind of job? Who has a retirement kind of job? Who's planning for retirement? You're 31. What are you, fucking little old lady? Why are you even worrying about retirement? Should I be pushing people to save their money in Bitcoin every chance? You just can't store your money in the U.S. dollar. That's the only thing. If you're saving money, you have to find some alternative vessel for your wealth. What most people do is mutual funds or real estate or something like that, but you can't save U.S. dollars because they're always worth less tomorrow than they are today. What about selling drugs? You were in the military. You have access to super combat pills and ultra back pain memory blasters. You probably have access to some of the best pills in the nation. There will never be a perfect state, and there will never be a perfect set of conditions where everybody's got free speech and there's no longer this constant 24/7 battle for resources and attention and the power to change people's opinions, et cetera, et cetera. It's always going to be a battle. The thing that you have the most direct control over is your attitude as a participant in this battle, which you are no matter what. It's going to find you. What's the, do you believe in Jewish? Well, you're in one. Yeah, no, the battle is going to find you. And maybe the most important thing to control anyway is your attitude. You should not be black-pilled because humanity and our people have faced much.
Did they mute a word out there, or did he actually just say it like that? Do you believe in Jewish while you're in one? Jewish what? Conspiracy? He's right. I say this all the time. A good example of this is this whole pagan versus Christian thing. People get terminally online. Okay, look. Everything sucks, right? Everything has sucked for 10 plus years. We all know that it sucks now. We're all talking about how everything sucks. We're all angry and upset because everything doesn't have to suck, but it does. But there's certain things you have control over, just like Sam is saying, right? You have total dominion over like your personal fitness and your diet. No one's forcing you to not go to the gym. No one's forcing you to eat McDonald's 3 times a week or whatever. You have control over that, and you need to focus on the things that you have control over. Yes, it's okay to go online and talk about whatever it may be, Jewish power, whatever, SJWs, whatever it is that you don't like that you think is fucking everything up. But don't get terminally online to the point where you're like angry about it and being negative all the time and like railing against things that you have no power over, right? So when I tweet about Christianity and a pagan replies to me and is like, you worship a Jew, you fucking loser, like you're a race traitor or whatever. It's like, what do you think you're doing, man? You think I'm going to read that and then not be Christian anymore? Don't be negative and don't be a dick when it's not worth it. If you're not accomplishing anything, then at least try not being a dick about it.
It's worse. We're not made of such weak stuff that if somebody spurgs out and messes with a computer program, all of a sudden it's doom and gloom forever. That's not the case, man. None of the problems that we face are problems that were created by one person in a short period of time. They were created by a cabal of people over 100+ years. Whatever fixes that, it's not going to be an easy fix. It's not going to be an overnight. It's not going to be thanks to a president or thanks to a CEO. It's only going to be thanks to...
Cabal is the word he didn't say before. That's why it was on his mind. Okay, mystery solved.
The continued efforts of everybody. Once a company has been infiltrated by DEI types and by Indians are up there with the most racially nepotistic people. They only have one. The competition is slim up there. Now you know. If I say it in German, is that code? They're not going to know. They're up there with the most racially nepotistic people. And if the company's been taken over by those types, it's time to start stealing and doing whatever you got to do to dismantle the company from within. Quiet quitting, whatever nasty tactic. Use ChatGPT. What sort of nasty tactics can I use to fuck with my employer over a 5-year period? Make it artful. Be artful about it. Figure out a way to take some money on your way out. Sort of flabbergasted over the Elon and the Vivek Twitter thing where they are proposing that this basically rape of America is somehow related to kids who practiced the piano more as children and didn't. The most fucking, the gayest part of the whole thing that Vivek did was he said we need more movies like Whiplash. Vivek suggested we need more movies like Whiplash. That's why the American dream failed, is because we don't abuse our children into becoming obsessive musicians.
That really is fucking stupid. And it's like, it's the same thing the SJWs were saying a decade ago of how, like, oh, we just need black scientists in movies. We need characters in movies who are homosexual black female scientists. And once you get that going, everything else will fix itself. And it just sounds so stupid on its face that you can't believe anybody actually thinks that way.
This is more plundering.
Whiplash is a good movie, though, for sure.
Pillaging. It's the rape of America continued. It's hitting the tech sector for the first time that's publicly visible, at least to me. I don't know. Is there any way to fight back? Could these software guys do a class action lawsuit? Is the racial nepotism provable? Is the racism in the hiring process provable? I mean, what did Cognizant pay? They did prove that there was racism in the hiring process with Cognizant. We're watching our future slip away. It's hard to see a way forward that doesn't involve
voting. Hey Sam, I just quit and moved out of Microsoft after being there for 10 years. One time in the Redmond campus at Microsoft, I was there with my two friends at a Indian buffet, and I see these people come in, a whole family, and I was happy that they were there, good for them, whatever.
Shit.
And they start like scooping shit up with their hands, no utensils or anything like that, and I'm like, cultural difference or whatever. Looking back at it, both of those friends lost their job, and they were replaced by those type of people. I sound like a fucking racist asshole. I'm not trying to be. What I'm trying to say is, like, that's not America. I'm America. Those two friends were America. You were spot on, man. And I'm just a little irritated with what the fuck's going on.
I'm really looking forward to my debate with Vivek Ramaswamy, because part of what we're witnessing is the breakdown of reason, because rationality has been weaponized against normal people. And I don't just mean the GLBTQ or DEI stuff. In particular, this American dream shit, this propositional nation stuff. This is the line that it's been for 70 years or more, is the America is a nation for anybody who wants to become an American. And then once you
Yeah, a nation of immigrants.
accept that, once you accept that that's the case, the definition of what...
As if the defining characteristic of the first people who came over and built the country was immigrant. If you need to know one thing about these people, they're immigrants. That's the key to their success.
American is, like, you're just constantly moving goalposts and changing definitions, and it doesn't matter.
I do think Vivek is going to talk to Sam, which isn't really that surprising. Vivek has always displayed a willingness to engage. But yeah, I do think he's serious that they're going to be doing that.
None of the definitions matter. Once you accept the core proposition that anybody can come here and just...
It's too bad Elon Musk never commented on the Sam video. I bet Elon Musk was seething because Sam specifically like called out the Groypers or named them and was like, why are you banning the Groypers? And Elon was probably like seething about that a little bit.
Be here. It stops mattering what here is. So I'm really looking forward to my debate with Vivek Ramaswamy, because he will be able to see in person that all the words, all the rational arguments, and the paragraphs about what an American is, and the paragraphs about how anybody with a dream can do anything and become anything, he'll see in person that I don't care about what an Indian says. I'm not willing to have a discussion about the definition of what an American is. I'm not interested in hearing somebody else's proposal for what an American is. Everybody knows what an American is. If there's a degree or two of variation between Americans, what an American is, it doesn't matter. Anytime you try to argue in good faith with somebody who wants...
Now I understand. There was this viral tweet yesterday, and I didn't really understand the context, but now I do. So the actual tweet here just says true with that meme, and then AJ says, what's your plan to eliminate 100 million American citizens who aren't white? Is there a plan or just gutter tier racist engagement bait? And then you got the same community note here. They're citizens. And then you had like all these people like Shapiro. They are indeed American, and you are an un-American asshole. So it's just like Konstantin Kisin saying, what makes you American is loving gay pride parades and nothing else. And not being racist. That's like the most important thing. So these guys are Americans because they pretend to not be racist, even though they're extremely racially nepotistic. But you're not an American because you don't pretend hard enough to not be racist. The right-wing ethno-nationalist movement is so fake, it's actually sad. For 5 years, I've posted at length about being a legal immigrant, and I've gotten nothing but love and zero hate on X. In real life, yada, yada, yada. I ain't reading all that. This stuff is wrong, incorrect, and politically suicidal loser mindset. You see how uphill our battle is, you guys? That people who are ostensibly smart can't actually engage and just call you a loser and call you un-American. The woke right are not MAGA. Yeah, well, guess what? We might be losers, but guess who's on our side? Sam Hyde, who's way fucking cooler than you are, sorry to say.
Steal from you. You try to argue in good faith with somebody who is not going to Iron Man your arguments. You're going to give them every intellectual consideration possible, they're going to give you none. Anytime you even open your mouth to do anything that's not derision, you're losing. You're accepting their proposition that what you know,
so
the
based.
same way you know that the sky is blue, what an American is. When you accept that you're
saying,
I'm not interested in hearing somebody else, but somebody who wants.
Now I understand. There was this viral tweet yesterday, and I didn't really understand the context, but now I do. So the actual tweet here just says true with that meme, and then AJ says, what's your plan to eliminate 100 million American citizens who aren't white? Is there a plan or just gutter tier racist engagement bait? And then you got the same community note here. They're citizens. And then you had like all these people like Shapiro. They are indeed American, and you are an un-American asshole. So it's just like Konstantin Kisin saying, what makes you American is loving gay pride parades and nothing else. And not being racist. That's like the most important thing. So these guys are Americans because they pretend to not be racist, even though they're nothing else. You are an un-American asshole. So it's just like Konstantin Kisin saying, what makes you American is loving gay pride parades and nothing else. And not being racist. That's like the most important thing. So these guys are Americans because they pretend to not be racist, even though they're extremely racially nepotistic. But you're not an American because you don't pretend hard enough to not be racist. The right-wing ethno-nationalist movement is so fake, it's actually sad. For 5 years, I've posted at length about being a legal immigrant, and I've gotten nothing but love and zero hate on X. In real life, yet. Yada yada yada. I ain't reading all that. This stuff is wrong, incorrect, and politically suicidal loser mindset. See how uphill our battle is, you guys? That people who are ostensibly smart can't actually engage and just call you a loser and call you un-American. The woke right are not MAGA. Yeah, well, guess what? We might be losers, but guess who's on our side? Sam Hyde, who's way fucking cooler than you are, sorry to say.
Steal from you. You try to argue in good faith with somebody who is not going to Iron Man your arguments. You're going to give them every intellectual consideration possible. They're going to give you none. Anytime you even open your mouth to do anything that's not derision, you're losing. You're accepting their proposition that what you know,
so
the
based.
same way you know that the sky is blue, what an American is. When you accept that you're
anytime you open your mouth to do anything other than derision, you're losing. Let's go. The time for the real vibe shift.
Knowledge of that can be affected by somebody's paragraph, you're already losing. So these people, when they come to you, when you see them, the only thing you should have to say to them is, hey, that's it. That's all you need to say. You don't need to say anything else. Within your community, within your Discord, within your friend group, whatever, you can have whatever discussion you want. But if it's an outsider who's here telling us how to do business, that's not in the game plan. That's not part of the show. That's not happening. All right? So I'm not saying you need to not think.
Who the fuck is Pepper?
Think about these things and not talk about them with your friends, whatever. But when an outsider comes here, gets in your face, and starts throwing definitions at you, and you got to Google shit, no, we're not doing that. You're getting called a slur. I don't know which one. Whichever one I feel like saying, doing that. You're getting called a slur. I don't know which one. Whichever one I feel like saying at the moment. You're getting called a slur. Doesn't he wear shoes that are too big for him? Yo, oh man, that sucks, dude. Yo, Vivek told me that he would come on the show if I read all 4 of his books. That's a real thing, by the way. Like, that's you can come on my show if you watch the iDubbbz documentary. It's just funny. For the guy that's about having good faith debate, the guy that's about an exchange of ideas, if that's what he's about, right? Telling me I have to do homework in order to talk to him. I have to sit through his 4th grade brainwashing here about how
Vivek
good. Bleep that. My next how Vivek good. Bleep that. My next book.
Vivek
are good.
Jeets, is that what he's saying?
By J.K. Rowling.
I think the world is a complicated place, but it's not all doom and gloom. Accepting that it is all doom and gloom only helps make it worse. Pretty fucking brainlit take, I guess, but even the little guy's got to keep his head up. There is no great man theory. It is a collection of many small people moving for greatness. That and Indians kind of stink.
That is indeed a brainlit take, and that is why it is good and true. Because at the bottom end of the spectrum, you have the people who are just as smart as the people at the top end of the spectrum. It is the case that every day, even some of the worst ones, are gifts. They are gifts. Every day is a gift from a creator who loves you and wants the best for you. When you get into the weeds and you start thinking, what do we do? What do we do? What's going to happen? It's easy to black pill because it is such a complicated problem. Everything is interdependent and constantly evolving, not to mention rigged, that a solution is hard to be seen. But in terms of your actual life, when you close Twitter and you go back to reality, you have people, you have the air outside, you have just being here, just being alive. Like there's a whole world out there. There's a whole world out there, guys. And it is the one we have. It's the very best. It's unbelievable. It's filled with joy and opportunity. It's the best thing. It's the only thing you have. Probably should all enjoy it to the max. Live it to the max, bro. Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, Indian people do stink. Okay. So we'll get this going. I gotta figure out this chair situation.
Indian people do stink.
This thing is not the one. I probably need an actual chaise lounge thing where I'm like laying down.
We're all gonna make it, bros. The Sam Hyde Show. Good stuff. Good stuff. We are all gonna make it. I liked what you said about your identity not being up for debate with a Jeet trying to steal your country from. Yeah, exactly. We have good arguments, but what we need far more than arguments is self-assertion. Yes. Hey, what up, Familama Ding Dong? It is I, your boy LP, and the clip you just watched is from my live stream show, The Daily Cope, which I do 4 to 5 times a week on Rumble, Odyssey, and my other YouTube channel. I will link all of them below if you want to check it out. And thanks for watching. Hope you're having a great day, and I will catch you on the flip side. Peace out.
Me, SBHQ on the mic. I'm the realest MC. I am Martin Luther King of the scene. Yeah. Why you booing me, man? I'm the greatest rapper of all time. Guys, stop.
And Anakin has absolutely zero riz.
I don't like sand.
Hey, you guys knew I was going to play that clip at some point in this video. It's obligatory. And I don't even disagree with that assessment. I just don't think it goes deep enough. But prequel fans are often quick to counter that, of course Anakin is bad at flirting. He's been cooped up in a temple with an order of celibate warrior monks since he was 10 years old and had a very stunted upbringing. He hasn't had a chance to practice his social skills in like a decade. And the fact that he's been actively told by the Jedi not to go around falling in love hasn't exactly lent itself to an ability to talk to women. And yeah, that is actually fair. I agree with that point. I think the problem is more with Padme and the way she reciprocates these advances. She did similarly have a less than orthodox childhood, and so she probably doesn't have the best social skills, though surely far better than Anakin's considering her station and experience in diplomacy. But the thing is, this movie is kind of starting off at a disadvantage in terms of the way Padme views Anakin, and so it's having to fight an uphill battle in order to make this relationship even slightly believable.
And he'll always be that little boy I knew on Tatooine.
These characters met when they were both still kids, but Padme was already a fair bit older than Anakin, and obviously one would hope any sort of romantic affection was the last thing that was ever on her mind anytime she interacted with him as a little boy. They seem to get along fairly well, and considering what a dark place she was in at the time, with her planet being under a tyrannical blockade and her people suffering, I'm sure his presence was something of a shining light for her that she remembers fondly years later. But now that they're reunited, she kind of has to mentally separate that little boy she knew with the young man she now sees before her, which is kind of difficult to do already without all his constant whining and the very creepy things he says to her.
You're exactly the way I remember you in my dreams.
Padme as a character is someone who prioritizes her career and the people she can help with it above any personal interests or desires. Not to mention that their respective commitments restrict her from being with this person specifically. So there has to be something about Anakin that's enticing enough to make her fall in love with him despite all those factors, beyond just the fact that he's hot. And unfortunately, they never really develop that attraction. She just kind of falls for him despite herself, even though he's not charming, he's not particularly likable, and he can't flirt for shit. I mentioned this in the last video, but a simple rewrite to The Phantom Menace that would have helped this significantly would have been if Anakin was just a bit older when the Jedi found him on Tatooine. If he'd been around the same age as Padme when they met, then not only could he have been a source of joy for her at a time when things were so dire, but they could have also developed that attraction in the first one, and then the second movie would benefit from being able to build off of what was already there. But if we're taking The Phantom Menace as is and we're not allowed to change it, then I still think there are ways to make this relationship believable. It's possible, but it seems like George was striving for the exact opposite in every single scene. Again, people like to shit on the dialogue, and that's fair, but the dialogue is terrible throughout this movie.
How many ways are there for me to say, shut the fuck up?
It's the way this cringy dialogue is used that's specific.
To say,
dialogue is terrible throughout this movie.
How many ways are there for me to say, shut the fuck up?
It's the way this cringy dialogue is used that specifically damages any chance of a sane human woman ever finding him desirable. Like, sorry Anakin, I'm sure you're a swell guy, and I know you guys got along well when you were kids, but you barely know each other. Let's be realistic. You've been reunited for a couple of days and you're already pouring your entire soul into a speech about how you're obsessed with her and that her very presence is tormenting you. I don't think a scene like this would work even if the movie had done a good job setting it up beforehand, but it especially doesn't feel earned when the only things we've gotten up until this point is a really awkwardly timed kiss and a picnic in a field where Anakin advocates for fascism.
Sounds an awful lot like a dictatorship to me.
Well, if it works.
It was extremely romantic.
But the thing is, even if their chemistry was convincing, that really wouldn't matter because of, well, this scene. So they go to Tatooine after another especially brutal nightmare about his mother, find the Lars homestead, Anakin rides off to find her, and she dies in his arms at the Tusken Raider camp. For the record, I think everything about this moment is really good. Probably the best scene in the whole movie. The acting is on point, the sort of chaotic energy to the music really sells Anakin's instability as he finally takes his first steps into darkness. Everything about it just works. Except for the part where he tells Padme,
To be angry is to be human.
oh boy. So Padme's whole deal throughout both these movies so far has been that she cares deeply about people, especially the innocent. Pretty much every action she's taken her whole life has been in service of helping as many people as she can, with no regard for her own personal happiness. The films constantly go out of their way to reinforce to us that she's a good person and that the suffering of others is something that weighs heavily on her. I mean, even the whole body double thing. She's willing to play along with the charade, but when it's clear there's actual danger present, she's deeply impacted by the fact that someone died for her and isn't willing to let that happen again, so she uses herself as bait. So her saying this to Anakin after he just confessed to the massacre of innocent women and children is a choice, to be sure, but this could work if it was just rewritten so that Padme had a sort of dark side. Like, let's say Padme was someone who theoretically does want to help people however she can, but that the constant pressures of always having to put others before herself since she was a child have slowly gotten to her and made her weary of it all. If the films ever characterized her as someone who has selfish and destructive tendencies that Anakin sort of brings out in her, which would be helped greatly by a version of their romance where he was actually charming and attractive, that would be one thing. I wouldn't have nearly as big a problem with this if it was framed so that her accepting what Anakin did was an indictment on her character. Then from there, you would build a sort of toxic and possessive relationship where both of them actively bring out the worst in each other, despite how much they might care for one another, a la Jimmy and Kim. But as it stands, Padme is basically presented throughout all these movies as this paragon of virtue. She is the example of what it means to be good and do the right thing no matter what, and her relationship with Anakin isn't even really depicted as anything particularly toxic until he, it actually does turn to the dark side fully. Although considering Padme was cool with the Tusken slaughter, I'm not really sure why she's drawing the line at him killing younglings. Maybe if this new version of Padme was characterized to buy into the whole Tuskens aren't people narrative that the Lars family were talking about, then you could maybe work around that, but again, that's gonna require turning her into a more selfish and somewhat narrow-minded character. Honestly though, my preferred reworking of the scene would simply be that Anakin doesn't tell her at all. That way you don't have to compromise on her main character trait, plus you actually have some added bonuses. For one, I think the only person Anakin should have confided in about this is Palpatine.
Remember what you told me about your mother and the Sand People?
This would signify just how much Anakin trusts Palpatine to the point where he's comfortable confessing his greatest sin to him, but not to the Jedi or Obi-Wan, not even to Padme, the love of his life. Then throughout the rest of the story, even if they are in love, it's never exactly true, is it? Anakin hasn't told her everything about himself because he knows if she knew the truth, she would be disgusted by him, and then that can play into his insecurities and only drive him further into Palpatine's arms. But that's not what they did, so as it stands, yikes, Padme. What the fuck? Like, I wonder how frustrated Jango's gonna be when he finds out George just did his job for him.
I slaughtered them.
It was extremely romantic.
And just because I feel like it's kind of the obvious thing to do here for him.
I slaughtered them.
It was extremely romantic.
And just because I feel like it's kind of the obvious thing to do here, let's compare this romance plot to that of Han and Leia from The Empire Strikes Back. The two actually have chemistry going into the film because A New Hope bothered setting it up. Their back and forth is a more argumentative, confrontational one, and that stays consistent throughout the trilogy. It's their love language, and it's based on who they are as people, so the dialogue always feels natural and bolsters the romantic connection. But like I said, it also helps tremendously that there was a clear attempt from the outset to actually develop them as a potential couple, with Lucas playing around with the love triangle between them and Luke.
You think a princess and a guy like me? No.
Part of this scene was really just Han messing with Luke, but it still works as a setup for that ultimate eventuality. And obviously once it was retconned so that Luke and Leia were long-lost siblings, there really wasn't much of a contest for who was going to end up with who, but that only worked because the last film did such a good job making their relationship believable. Unlike with Padme, it actually feels within character for Leia to go for a guy like Han, despite everything she's ever believed about herself telling her that he's wrong for her. Having been raised as a princess, she naturally would have been brought up to expect a husband of regal stature, probably in some kind of arrangement made by her father, but that's not exactly how her life turned out, is it? Now she has no kingdom and is barely getting by with the clothes on her back, and that opens up a whole new world for her of interesting characters she might have otherwise never met, or at least never looked at twice. So no, Han is absolutely not an ideal match for her, and yet she finds him exciting and dangerous, while also recognizing that he has compassion. Unlike with Padme and Anakin, there are no external factors telling her they can't be together, and internally she has every reason to want him. Now, of course, these relationships aren't exactly comparable, because at least Han is an actual good person who hasn't massacred any indigenous villages that we know of. But the only thing I can really say to that is maybe if you want a woman to fall in love with a guy, don't have that guy do something so monstrous that every principled bone in her body should be telling her to run in the opposite direction. Again, you could have reworked this film to either have Padme never find out about the Tusken Massacre, or tweak her character so that her being willing to overlook it actually makes sense. But it's all about what you're working with here. Because Leia is the type of person who would never accept Han if she found out he did something like that, they just decided not to have Han ever do something like that. See? Problem solved. Han is also just naturally charming, and the dialogue in these films is a bit better, though still far from perfect. Which makes it a lot easier overall to buy that these characters have grown to like each other. They already had something of a bond at the end of the first movie, and then there was some development of that over time thanks to years of adventures together, so by the time we meet them again in Empire, there's this will they won't they tension that's already present. They spend half the movie stuck on a ship together, forced to interact with one another, all the while knowing that even if they survive this, he's just gonna leave to pay off his debts and they probably won't ever see each other again. And then they get captured, Han is about to be frozen in carbonite, and Leia finds herself saying the one thing she's been thinking but never thought would actually come out of her mouth.
I love you.
I know.
This is all you need to get the point across. I don't want a scene where Anakin and Padme are about to be wheeled out to their execution and Padme delivers this dreadful excuse of a love confession.
I've been dying a little bit each day since you came back into my life.
What are you talking about?
I love you.
I thought that we had decided not to fall in love and that it would destroy our lives.
I think our lives are about to be destroyed anyway. I truly, deeply love you.
This isn't how people talk, George.
It was extremely romantic.
It almost feels unfair to compare these two relationships since one is from a far better movie, but I think it speaks volumes about George Lucas as a creative and his limitations therein that this is what we end up with when it's a movie he wrote. I've already said that George is at his best when he has other people around him to guide his ideas in ways that work. He's not good at writing dialogue, so let someone else do that part. It's okay, there's no shame in it. I'd much prefer he brings in someone who actually knows how humans talk than end up with something like this.
You're so beautiful.
It's only because I'm so in love.
No. No, it's because I'm so in love with you.
So love has blinded you.
I just can't do it. I can't take this shit no more, man.
But anyway, I feel like I'm skipping ahead. So Anakin and Padme are on Tatooine burying his mother, which is another scene I really like, by the way. Everything about the loss of his mom and how that affects him going forward is good stuff, and I only wish it was developed more, but we'll get into that more in the next movie. Then they're informed that Obi-Wan has sent a message, and this is where the plot lines finally start to reconverge. Once we get to Geonosis, things really take a nosedive, especially in what's possibly the single worst scene in this entire movie, the droid factory. Here's a fun fact about the droid factory sequence I learned while watching the behind the scenes docs as research for this video. George Lucas came up with it at basically the last minute and then forced his VFX artists to work around the clock just to bring it to life in a nearly insurmountable deadline.
After I'd say the first cut, George felt there was a little bit that needed to take place in Reel 5.
The kinetic energy of the movie had picked up to the point where we were starting to get some momentum, and to stop and have dialogue at that point just didn't work.
The droid factory sequence came up, 8 or 9 months into the editing of the film. It was never originally part of the story.
So one day we get this call from George, hey, come on downstairs. I've got an idea for a new sequence.
Because these sequences were envisioned and put together well after principal photography was actually done, we had a lot less time to actually do them.
And they all went just absolutely nuts. I think they were working 20, 22 hours a day, sleeping upstairs, and they came out with this remarkable scene.
The way these people talk about such horrible work conditions in this cavalier way, as if it was fun and exciting, really speaks volumes to how overworked and underpaid our VFX workers are. More and more in this industry, producers and directors are finding new ways to cut costs and overload their underlings with work they're not equipped to handle in the time they're given. And so not only are they suffering under the weight of all that, we end up getting less than ideal results in modern media. Films and shows with massive budgets produced by some of the largest companies in the world continue to generate effects that hardly look better than that which you might find in a PS2 game. And I think at least some of that can be traced back to the way people like George Lucas treated their workers back in the halcyon days of CGI and visual effects being used in the digital arena. I'm certainly no expert on the subject, and I'm not even going to try to pretend otherwise. All I can really say is that one of the largest complaints leveled against the prequels as a whole, but especially Attack of the Clones, was that the VFX looked frankly rubbish. Yoda particularly, especially Attack of the Clones, was that the VFX looked frankly rubbish. Yoda particularly is a major complaint. Was that the VFX looked frankly rubbish. Yoda particularly is a major complaint, given that he's one of the most prominent digital characters in the film, and the artist tasked with bringing him to life had much being asked of them. Seriously, if you watch the behind the scenes, it might astonish you just how anal Lucas was about getting this one small shot of Yoda exactly right, only for it to still not really look very good because Yoda just doesn't look good generally in this film. I'm not here trying to dunk on the use of CGI as opposed to practical effects. My stance is and has always consistently been that both are mere tools that are neither good nor bad, and whatever the scene calls for should dictate which one is used. The Balrog in Fellowship of the Ring was never going to look good practically, and the CG version ended up being used to great effect in the final product. Similarly, there are a lot of things from the prequels that demanded to be done digitally, and I would have had it no other way. Even Yoda, based on some of the things he had to do in this movie that would not have worked if they'd gone with the puppet, especially that puppet. So no, I'm not critiquing that this film would not have worked if they'd gone with the puppet, especially that puppet. So no, I'm not critiquing that this film heavily relied on CGI and blue screen. I just take umbrage with the way a lot of it was handled behind the camera. But with that said, let's actually take a look at the sequence that demanded so much of the artists. George was so hell-bent on getting this scene in the movie by the release deadline, so it better be worth its buck, right? Well, I suppose it should be the obvious conclusion that the VFX don't look good given everything we just went over. But again, I don't really blame the artists for that. They did the best they could with what little time they had, and this is a massive sequence that demanded a lot from them. But there's more to it than that. The actual logistics are very poor, and a lot of that's down to the direction, so let's dive into that. Anakin and Padme sneak into the factory through a little side door and immediately get swarmed by Geonosians, causing them to rush out into the main catacomb and onto the tiniest little platform you've ever seen that's meant to extend into a bridge. I guess it makes sense that this thing is so narrow since all the Geonosians can just fly wherever they want to go, but then that raises the question of why there's a bridge here at all and why it's not always extended. But then again, I could ask that question about A New Hope as well, and we all know if it happened in one of the good movies, it's not allowed to be criticized. In any case, Padme's clumsy ass falls right onto the conveyor belt, and Anakin jumps down to go rescue her. From there, things get even weirder. Padme is being moved toward these big smashy things, and instead of just running back in the direction of Anakin, which she can easily do given the speed at which this belt is moving, she decides to rush forward into the danger. She does this a few times until she and Anakin are thoroughly separated, which shouldn't be so much of an issue since Anakin knows which direction she went in and can easily follow, but for some reason he doesn't do that and instead jumps down to a different conveyor belt, so Padme's on her own, I guess. Meanwhile, R2 and 3PO decide to join the party, and because 3PO won't get out of his way, R2 just decides he's gonna fucking murder him, and I think that's an incredibly interesting writing decision. I guess the little sociopath doesn't really care all that much about 3PO at this point since they basically just met, and no, I'm not counting the few times they interacted like 10 years ago, and he wants to get out there as quickly as possible to help Anakin and Padme. But I'm gonna remember this moment the next time I watch A New Hope and want to feel any emotion toward 3PO offering to donate his parts to restore R2 after the Battle of Yavin. I always took that moment to mean that while the two might bicker, they still really care about one another and would do anything for each other. I guess Threeps didn't get the memo though. Not to worry though, there was conveniently a droid flying just below the area in time to catch 3PO and then drop him into the depths of hell. Then a bunch of bullshit happens to get 3PO into the line of battle droids being constructed, and I'm gonna be a real asshole with how pedantically I nitpick this, but only because I don't think the battle droid 3PO bit is in any way funny, so the payoff was not worth all the contrivances that facilitated it. He gets his head lobbed off by a robot arm, then he kind of stumbles his way onto the line despite there being a large gap between these two areas that he should have fallen into. There might be a little piece of ground that connects them both here. I can't really tell. But even then, I'd say it's convenient that 3PO chose that specific spot to walk, considering the whole joke is that he's walking around blind.
I'm so confused.
You and me both, man. And don't think I was just gonna skip past the fact that R2 can apparently fucking fly now. People like to make fun of this complaint as though it's just OT purists getting their panties in a bunch over small, inconsequential changes, which is kinda how I would categorize things like Yoda engaging in lightsaber combat, but we'll get to that later. But I think R2 being able to fly all of a sudden isn't nothing. There are moments in the original films where him being able to do that would have been extremely useful. People like to appeal to off-screen shit like, oh, maybe the rockets got broken between trilogies, or Bail Organa decided to take them away from him for some reason. But I think I've more than made my stance clear what I think of all that. If it's not in the films, or at least reasonably implied, I don't care. Also, this is a side note, but there are a distracting amount of times in this movie where R2 is forced to negotiate a flight of stairs, and it always cuts away before showing it, and he somehow manages to keep up with the people he's following. I guess we have to just assume he flew past them, even though in some shots we can at least see him attempting to do it the right way. The reason I bring it up, though, is because there actually is a shot in A New Hope where we briefly see him trying to trundle down some stairs, and it's really funny. Frankly, I consider it cowardice on Lucas's part that he strayed away from ever having to depict this epic battle on screen in later installments. Anyway, checking back in with our main characters, let's see this epic battle on screen in later installments. Anyway, checking back in with our main characters, let's see how they're doing. Some bullshit happened that I don't even really know how to describe that caused Anakin to get his arm stuck underneath some kind of metal thing. Like, seriously, I've watched this movie dozens of times throughout my life and have never been able to figure out what the fuck happened here. I even took it into my editor, slowed it down, and went frame by frame, and the best I can come up with is that his arm is somehow encased in this part here and somehow didn't get crushed by the big smashy thing. I can't imagine any version of this where his arm isn't reduced to jelly, but it actually gets even funnier. A minute later, this large blade chops into it and cuts right through the metal, completely severing Anakin's lightsaber. But again, his hand and arm remain completely intact, for now anyway. There's just a general bit of plot armor that all these characters have throughout the sequence. 3PO with basically all the bullshit I laid out a minute ago. Anakin with this, it's really lucky his head was just far enough away to not get smashed like his arm should have been. And Padme gets a healthy dose of it when a Geonosian knocks her into some kind of barrel thing that then gets taken over to a different part of the factory to be filled up with molten lava. R2 rescues her just in the nick of time, like literally right at the exact moment she was about to be killed. Very lucky. I guess that justifies him killing C-3PO so that he could get him out of the way. Otherwise, R2 would have been too late to save Padme. I can unironically imagine someone making that point, so I've elected to laugh at it prematurely. George stated that the reason he added this sequence was because of the pacing. He felt that some momentum had been built up without any kind of climax, and so that's what the droid factory scene was meant to resolve. But to be honest, man, I don't think you needed to do this much to facilitate that. You already brought the actors back for reshoots. Just write a quick scene where they get swarmed by Geonosians, try to make a run for it, but ultimately get captured, which is basically what happens anyway, just without all this needless bullshit. The only thing that really changes if you take this out is, again, the C-3PO battle droid joke, but seeing as that adds nothing other than some light comedy during the arena battle, I say we can do without that. Or if you really want that for some reason, just pull an Empire and have him wander away from the group and then get blasted to hell and reconfigured onto the droid's body. You don't need to do all this. I talked about some of the logistical problems, but really my biggest takeaway is that the droid factory sequence is just messy. There's just too much going on. All these crazy moving parts and big machinery swinging around make for a disorienting feeling, which I suppose is kind of the point. It seems like they were going for it being overwhelming, even to a Jedi character trying to navigate through, but I think at a certain point, less is more. And contrary to what Rick McCallum seems to believe, just because you can pack a million things in each and every shot doesn't mean you should, or that it'll make it better.
You have to see the film 2 or 3 times. It's so dense. There's so many different things that are going on in each frame.
If the Naboo escape sequence in episode 1 is bad because it's low energy and directed sluggishly, then Droid Factory has the exact opposite problem. There's a little gray area in there, and that's where you operate. So the good guys get captured and reunited with Obi-Wan out in the arena, where they're about to be executed by a bunch of monsters that the Geonosians just have on hand here. You get the impression, based on the setting and menagerie, that this is meant to be reminiscent of a gladiator-style spectacle. They aren't just being executed, they are the entertainment. But I'm not really sure what the Separatists were expecting them to do while chained to these pillars. Why not at least let them run around trying to evade the monsters and give the Geonosians an actual show? And it's not like they were anticipating that the Jedi would break free, or at the very least it doesn't seem like Gunray was expecting that to happen, given how he reacted when it did. Looking at this from Dooku's perspective, making a spectacle spectacle out of the execution of these characters rather than just chopping their heads off privately is an intentional maneuver to make a statement to the Republic, but he also arranged it this way to drag it out so the Jedi would attack them with their new army, thus officially starting the war. It works a lot better as a narrative if the Republic are the ones who started it, and he can justify their executions on the basis that Padme was snooping around their factories uninvited as a form of espionage, which then provokes the Jedi into trying to rescue them. That's all to say, it doesn't really matter to him one way or another if Anakin, Obi-Wan, or Padme dies here, so I say why not draw it out as much as you can by arming them and giving them a fighting chance. I guess it doesn't really matter since they break free anyway, but I just think it's a strange choice. There's a lot to cover about this battle on a meta level that I feel now is worth getting into. The first thing, of course, is the fact that the Battle of Geonosis is what kicked off the galactic scale conflict that would come to be known as the Clone Wars.
You fought in the Clone Wars?
A conflict baked into legend decades after it ended that even a random farm boy on the outskirts of civilization would come to associate with the term Jedi Knight. And finally, 25 years after this concept was first introduced, we're finally being shown on screen what exactly these Clone Wars were.
Clone War.
Clone War, I guess. It's just the one war, after all. Now, I have my issues with the way the prequels decided to handle the Clone Wars. Issues that I mainly take with Episode 3, but some that I think are larger problems plaguing the Clone Wars. Issues that I mainly take with Episode 3, but some that I think are larger problems plaguing the whole trilogy, so it's worth taking a step back and examining it now that they've begun. The first is hardly a new or original take, but I'm of the belief that this war really should have gotten started in Episode 1, and not at the tail end of the second to last film in the trilogy. This war was a massive deal that would go on to define the downfall of the Jedi Order and Republic and the subsequent rise of the Empire and birth of Darth Vader, and we barely see any of it. Yeah, we got a TV show fleshing it out, but in the films themselves, we get this one battle, and then throughout Revenge of the Sith, we only really hear about the conflict as something happening elsewhere, far away. Even the Battle of Coruscant, which opened the film, kind of felt like its own isolated incident. Despite happening above the capital planet of the Republic,
gonna be the
people here who are otherwise law-abiding except for the fact that
holy sh. Let's do it.
Alves walked into a bodybuilding gym in.
Imagine stating that every Trump voter is a conspiracy theorist and saying that anything Trump does is to hide something else.
They usually chat to each other in four.
Came on here with a heart.
Doing out with what he truly feels about me.
You know, people.
Which serves as a setting for a good bulk of the film, you never really see Coruscant having been affected by the battle that took place in their skies. There isn't any kind of carnage or scarring, there aren't injured people and Jedi dealing with relief efforts. It happened, the Jedi stopped it, and it basically didn't have any consequences. Even killing Count Dooku didn't really seem to accomplish anything as far as the film was concerned. And again, these are more issues I take with Revenge of the Sith, but the point of bringing it up now is that the Clone Wars were treated as a big deal, and served as the backbone for the destruction of a regime that had stood for over 1,000 generations, and we barely see any of it. We barely even meet more than a couple of those clones we've heard so much about. All we're really taught by the movies themselves is vaguely how the war got started and why, and how they ended, which I guess are the two most important parts, but there's an entire middle chunk there that just happened off screen. The other major criticism I have with the Clone Wars is how little time in galactic history it actually covers. It only went on for 3 years, which you can and should argue is an issue with Revenge of the Sith for only setting it itself 3 years after Attack of the Clones, but it's also true that had the war gotten started in Phantom Menace, then by the time of episode 2, it would have been in full effect for some time already. We'd be able to better explore a lot of the stuff I've already gone over in this video, like how the Jedi view Count Dooku and what he told Obi-Wan about the Sith controlling the Republic. What would they think about their role in the war, especially with the prospect that it might be serving their greatest enemy by fighting in it at all? Why do the Senate so readily accept Palpatine as their leader when the time comes for him to declare himself Emperor? Maybe we could see what the state of galactic politics looked like at this point when Palpatine had been their wartime leader for some years now. Maybe they view him as the glue holding it all together and continue giving him more time in office because they're scared of what might happen if he steps down while the war is still waging. I mentioned in my Clone Wars video that the war should have lasted longer than 3 years, but obviously I didn't blame the show itself for that. It was only working with the time frame it had been given, but I will criticize it here because these movies set the foundation for this entire era and they easily could have written it differently. And I'm not saying necessarily that you have to cut Maul out or anything. The prequels themselves are the ones that establish the rule of two as a thing, so you don't have to adhere to that if you're reworking these films. But I'd like to see Dooku as a presence across all three of them, just because it would do a better job making them feel more cohesive, but also because, as I'm sure you can all guess by now, I think he's woefully underdeveloped in the actual story we got, despite being super interesting in concept. He's got personal connections to two of the main characters through Qui-Gon, as well as being a prodigal son type former student of Yoda's who was well respected by everyone in the Order. So already there's some deeply interesting conflict to explore without even getting into the political intrigue he represents. This is much more of a soft rewrite compared to some of the ideas I was throwing around earlier. I don't know exactly what this version of the films would look like, but I just think it was a wasted opportunity having this all play out as it does. Sorry, George, it's not impressive just because you threw several dozen Jedi on screen and had them run around chopping up a cavalcade of mindless robots. It's all style over substance, and not even particularly good style. The choreography across the arena battle is a mess, and the rest of the battle isn't all that much better. There's absolutely no rhyme or reason to any of the army's movements on both sides. The troops aren't even taking cover. It looked cool and cinematic watching a bunch of clones spray blaster fire into a sandstorm, but tactically nothing about this battle makes any sense. Here's something I like though. This shot of Boba picking up his dad's helmet and pressing it to his head is neat, and it gives off the first steps down a dark path vibe that I think it was going for. I still maintain there was absolutely no reason to have a Boba Fett origin story in this movie, and that Jango could have easily been replaced by any other bounty hunter with a different name, but still. I like this shot, and it's about one of the only things I can really praise about this battle.
This is such a drag.
Fuck you. Anyway, I guess when writing this, George realized he needed a lightsaber fight to cap off the movie, and obviously he wanted it to be between Dooku and our main characters, so instead of doing any work to have Anakin and Obi-Wan figure out where Dooku is or where he's heading, they kind of just accidentally bump into him while in their gunship. But they can't fire on him now because they're all out of rockets. That's unlucky. This forces them to chase him to his destination at the landing platform, though I'm not even sure why they bothered with all that when all Yoda had to do was vaguely sense that something was going on and from there knew exactly where to go. I get that he's supposed to be extremely powerful, but this all just feels super convenient. Speaking of convenience, I guess George also realized he didn't really want Padme or the clones to be there when the fight happened. He just wants it to be between the Jedi and the Sith, so they gotta go. He can kill the nameless clones off easily enough by just having the gunship get fucking obliterated the second Obi-Wan and Anakin step off, but obviously that won't do for getting rid of Padme, so for her, we'll just have the ship get like rocked a little bit, and in keeping with the theme of Padme being clumsy, she just falls right out. Thank God this happened right here when they weren't too far off the ground and below was nothing but soft sand dunes, rather than about 20 seconds later when they were flying over this terrain. If it sounds like I'm nitpicking, I'm mostly just poking fun here. My ultimate point is that George really wanted this lightsaber battle to happen in a very specific way, but couldn't be bothered to come up with ways to facilitate that outcome naturally with the way the rest of this had been set up. Honestly though, I don't really know that every Star Wars movie needs a lightsaber duel, you know? Like, there was one in each of the originals and two in the last movie, but those all happened naturally in the story. Vader was actively searching for Obi-Wan, and Obi-Wan understood that he would need to confront Vader so he could serve as a distraction so the rest of the group could get away. Luke facing Vader on Cloud City was literally orchestrated so that exact outcome would happen. Vader lured Luke into a trap and fought him so he could take his measure. The Attack of the Clones fight did not occur naturally in the story, which means now there's extra pressure for this fight to be good. You wanted it to happen, so it better not be choreographed like shit. Oh, I guess one might argue that this fight needed to happen so that Anakin could get his arm cut off, even though we kind of already went over a moment where that already should have happened anyway. But again, I'm not even saying you can't have this fight happen, just do a better job reworking your script so that it comes about organically. In any case, Dooku kicks the shit out of Anakin and Obi-Wan in a way that I think works pretty well in showcasing how disorganized they are as a duo at this point, mainly due to the non-constructive ways in which Obi-Wan has taken his role as Anakin's mentor. Yes, Anakin was impulsive with how he charged at Dooku, but some of the blame belongs to Obi-Wan for the fact that his apprentice no longer listens to him when he shouts at him to stop and think. When all you do is criticize and nag and never show even an ounce of genuine praise, eventually he's just gonna tune you out, and I really like how that ultimately came back to bite him in the ass. If this movie was meant to show how aloof they are as a pair, Revenge of the Sith was there to show how far they'd come since then as brothers, only to eventually come apart in the end, and I think all that's pretty neat. But then comes the part that everyone likes to criticize, and I have a lot to say about Yoda in these movies, but so does everyone else, and I must say, some of the discourse I've seen surrounding this character is rather shit. Many people don't like this version of Yoda because they see a massive juxtaposition with how he's depicted in the original trilogy as this old, wise sage who deeply understands the Force and is kind of above it all because of how long he's lived and how much he's seen. He's the mentor to the mentor, and he's so incomprehensibly old that you almost don't even believe he was ever as young and inexperienced as Luke is. Even when Obi-Wan was young, he was ancient. So I think people look at that and they see how he's depicted in the prequels, and it just doesn't sit right with them that he's not nearly so zen and wise. He's actually a huge fool who gets duped into a war that costs countless lives and all but tears the Jedi Order apart. He gets things wrong, he resorts to violence, and he falls from grace. Of course, I don't necessarily agree with the interpretation that Yoda is this wizened sage who knows everything about everything in the OT. People seem to forget that he and Obi-Wan were trying to train Luke up to destroy the Sith and restore the Jedi Order. They wanted him to kill his father, and Luke had to be the one to realize they were wrong, that there's a better way. But I do take your meaning. Yoda obviously learned a lot from his failures in the prequels and came out of it a wiser, more self-reflective man. He understands that war is not what makes one great, and he knows that a Jedi should use the Force for knowledge and defense, never for attack. These are lessons he imparts upon Luke, and he's right, but people don't seem to realize that Yoda not abiding by these doctrines in the prequels isn't some kind of contradiction or oversight. That's the whole fucking point. It reads to me like people assumed Yoda would be about the same as he was in the originals in terms of wisdom and understanding, because again, he's so incomprehensibly